watching on TV? What's this? The oldest story.
His feet always took command of any situation. They were down at Greenleaf golfing, and after they'd finished 9 holes, they had to go in and have 25 minutes for lunch and get back on number 10 tee. While they're there and the waitress is trying to take their order, smoke is coming out of the kitchen. The chef throws open the door, and he says, "We have a grease fire in the kitchen, but don't anyone leave. You can go ahead and order, and we'll get the smoke cleared out as soon as possible." Joe turned to the waitress and he said, "In that case," he said, "I think we better have some smoked ham." That's Joe Caprino.
That's good. How long you known Joe?
I've known Joe for 40 years or better. Yeah. Played a lot of golf with Joe, bought a lot of merchandise from Joe. You know, I've done it all. Joe whenever we had affairs where we needed fundraisers or help or assistance, Joe may not have been on the committee, but he was always there for the help, you know. So he's a very special kind of a guy.
Think of something good and I can't. So it's better not to. No, but Joe's like a brother to me. He was brought up in our family as I think Al told you, he was brought up as one of the boys. When his parents came, or when he came over to this country, he grew up with us and he went into service with us, and then he went into service, he got back, and he got married. So he's all his life he spent with with us at our home as one of the boys. He ate what we did, and he slept like we did, 3 to a bed. So it's a long way, but he's done it, and he's done it through hard work. I feel so good that you cannot.
And I don't think you're ever going to find a person that's more generous and more open-hearted than Joe. He's had his adversities, and he understands what it is to be down and out. And I guess that's why he's such a philanthropist right now. Yeah, I have a lot of stories, but you'd have to be here for another year or so to get them all. Thanks.
The foundation dinner has to do with Joe Caprino. You know, Joe Caprino is so much part of the history of the Resource Center and so much part of what the community of Chautauqua has been able to make available for people with disabilities. And just to see so many people showing up, so many people being part of this celebration, I think is just fantastic. It's very thrilling for me, and I'm sure it'll be rewarding for Joe. So Joe, congratulations, and we are thrilled to be here to honor you.
And we of course love his son a lot too. Terrific.
How did Joe first get involved with the Resource Center?
I think it started with his interest in finding some services for his son Tony. And then he, of course, became very interested in the services and very interested in having some influence on how the services are organized and presented, and helped us out a great deal in the early years, and especially in terms of setting up group homes, residences. So and he's made so many contributions since then, you know, primarily by his service on the board of directors and the many committees that he's been on and so on. So he's been there always. It's been very strange, in fact, since he has not been on the board. You kind of feel the absence. So this is really a nice night.
Program honoring Joe Caprino. Joe and I go back a long time, and that's been a blessing in my life to share and have opportunities with he and Eric Guggen at one time. They were neighbors and very good friends, and we spent a lot of social time together with our operating with the Jamestown baseball team, and just those kind of things that were warm and fuzzy. When anything was warm and fuzzy, why, Joe Caprino was there to do it. And you know, he's been an inspiration for not only me, but just hundreds of people in this community. To watch him and to watch what he does and to see what happens, the benefactors in the community for Joe's work and Joe's tender, loving care. And that's why we're here tonight, to just to have the honor to be in his company and to see the community say thank you, Joe Caprino.
A long time worked with you on the Resource Center board for a number of years, but more importantly, I think I've known you for about 28 years when I called on you at Caprino's Complete Home Furnishings. You are the best promoter that Jamestown has ever seen. You made the station a ton of money. We love you. You are the greatest.
One of the things that may not be talked about tonight, so I might as well talk about it now, is the fact that Joe was very good at getting the board together after meetings. We'd often have these contentious meetings at the board and a lot of differing of opinions, but Joe would invite everybody over to his house afterwards, and Mary, his wife, would be very nice at putting out some wonderful spread. They'd bring out some libations afterwards, and somehow we got all those issues resolved. And so from about 1980 to 1990, most decisions were made because of the Caprino's kindness of opening up their house afterward. I mean, there's a lot of interesting issues and a lot of interesting personalities on the board, so Joe was able to meld them all together. The other thing is, it's just on a very personal note, Joe always willing to lend something, lend a hand, lend some money, when otherwise nobody else was able to do. When he believed in the cause, he really just took charge and did it. And for that, I'll always remember Joe, and I guess that's one of the things that's leading me to giving a little talk tonight. And hopefully you'll get it on later.
Thanks.
You know, Joe and I go back when he first started in business, and the audience will hear tonight that I probably am the only announcer in America, and in the world, that's done more shows at one stores than anybody else. I probably did over 1,000 shows for Joe. Does that sound unbelievable? But I have to thank him because he believed in our station and in our show. And I don't have time to tell you all the crazy promotions he ran. Joe never was at a loss for promotions. In fact, you'll probably hear a lot about it this evening, but I give him credit for ingenuity, creativity. He never rested, and that's why he was successful. But a most lovable, dear man, and we're fortunate to have him. Thank you.
Wishes. He was a superman, a very great man to work for, and just enjoyed it very much, and I don't know what else to say.
How many years did you work with him?
About 24 years. I was a bookkeeper there, and I enjoyed it very much, and he was always very good to me, and everything was very fine.
Of the Resource Center to formally welcome you, Paul Cesana. I'd like to have a repairman and another drink. Paul.
Thanks, Sam. Sam is always an exciting person. With a lot of excitement. We're absolutely thrilled to kick off what is the first TRC Foundation annual Legacy of Love dinner, honoring a person that we believe is very, very special to all our hearts. And I think that, I know that, of course, Joe is Italian. I think there's a lot of people of Italian origin up here, and I just couldn't help but to think of a little Italian proverb. And as you probably can imagine, most Italian proverbs have to do either with food, or saints, or wine. And this one goes something like, buona botte fa buon vino, which loosely translated means something like, it takes a good barrel to make good wine. And I think as tonight we'll have a chance to think about the many accomplishments that Joe has managed to accomplish through the years, we'll know that we are here to celebrate and give tribute to a very special person. So it's really my pleasure on behalf of the entire organization at the Resource Center to thank you for being part of this celebration and to welcome you to tonight's event. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. I was telling Paul before he came up that most of us are Sicilians. We aren't Italians. We are Tuttorigianos, Calabrese, Manghese, or whatever. But thanks again, we got it. It's now a pleasure to recognize a new acquaintance of mine, young gentleman who is also the chairman of the TRC Foundation, which is a distant cousin to the Resource Center. My pleasure, Randy Ordinas.
Well,
knows, it's my job to welcome everybody on behalf of the TRC Foundation, and I promise to keep my comments short, which I will. I got to say one thing. I don't know Mr. Caprino very well, but all I have to say is, wow, look at the turnout in this place. This is just amazing. Obviously, he's a very special gentleman. Once again, I'm here on behalf of the TRC Foundation, and as you all know, and if you don't know, if you can read the pamphlets in front of you, we're a newly organized foundation, and our primary goal is to support people in the community with disabilities. To this point, we've been incredibly fortunate, and this being our first formal event, we're even more fortunate to continue the ball rolling. We've developed a good board, and some of them are amongst you right now. With that in mind, I'll close this, and again tell you thank you for coming, and I'm very excited that the turnout is this big.
Thank you, Randy. And now to lead us in the invocation, Joe Caprino's very good friend, Al Galati.
And if I may say, Joe, we go way back. In fact, he's a relative of mine. He's my cousin. Now, if we just may remain seated and bow our heads, please. Lord God, our Father, your gifts of love are countless and your goodness is infinite. From your hand we have received generous gifts so that we might learn to share your blessings with others in gratitude. We thank you for your kindness. As Joseph Caprino has, open our hearts to concern for others so that we may share our gifts in loving service to those in need. Bless us, and a special blessing for Joe and his family for good health, happiness, and peace. Bless this food we are to receive. May it nourish us not only in body, but also in spirit, that we may grow stronger in faith as we strive for the coming of your kingdom. Amen.
Thank you, Al. Bon appetit. We'll see you right after dinner. Did anyone order dinner? An event of this size, I think, does not happen with the committee of 5. It happens with a lot of support people in the background that I need to recognize and for you to acknowledge. They are all employees at the Resource Center. Patsy Dodge, Pat Peel, Carol Vincegura, Vicki Bardo, Steve Watterson, and Ed Tomasini is taking the videos, which Joe will receive at the end of the program. Would you give them a hand for all their help? On behalf of the TRC Foundation, I think it would be appropriate for me to make a few comments, even though I don't fully understand the intricacies of that body. I am being baptized very quickly. But I know that it's important to us that you know who we are and about the people that we serve. And that while financial assistance is always a must, it is equally important to us that you know what we do, that you know how important we are to this community, and most of all, the families and the participants that we serve day in, day out, 24 hours a day. The committee, when we first convened, we had 4 members. We were commonly referred to as the grumpy old men. We are the champions of white cotton jockey shorts, back braces, and polyester. We needed someone to help us remember where our car keys might be, where we had parked the car. On the agenda, we start every meeting with number 1 item on the agenda. Let's go around the table and introduce ourselves. The second meeting, the agenda item, first item on the agenda. let's go around and introduce ourselves. And we would shake hands and say, you know, you look familiar. I've seen you someplace before. And we thought, you know, we needed some new blood. So we went out and we drafted Greg Peterson. And he's going to be with us. Joe is nervously awaiting all these kind words that will be coming his way, but I think, Joe, we are going to mess around with you for just a little bit. We will hit on 4 basic areas of your illustrious career: your service to the disabled, your service to your country, your well-being with your business endeavors, and your favorite part-time game of golf, which you never really did excel in. Speaking of golf, for those of you that don't understand this very intriguing game, it is truly a game of gentlemen. And now we have to say, and ladies. But if I may use the male gender just for a moment. And while I agree with the thought that it's a gentleman's game, when I think of that, I think of somebody like Al Short. And when I try to think of another one, I don't see anyone here tonight that falls into this category, what we call a true gentleman's game. Because a wayward shot in the woods from your opponent can bring on a feeling of joy and exhilaration that you've never ever had in your life. A ball hit into the pond brings on pure ecstasy. The whiff is the ultimate experience in golf. And everyone is always trying to do their way with the game. Mickey Hardley, every time he sees me, he literally offers me cash money to play with him, because he knows that if I do, he's going to double his investment, and that usually happens. Then visualize, if you will, a cosmopolitan, cool gentleman like Carl Kappa, missing a short putt, yanking his expensive cap off his head onto the fairway or the green, stomping around it, Gino laughing hysterically, and Brother L sitting in the cart praying to the Lord for forgiveness. So you see, a dollar bet, a simple dollar bet, can turn this gentleman's game into a terrorizing event. There's one word in golf that is never to be spoken amongst golfers. And I think you can talk about the whiffs and you can talk about the slam dunks, you can talk about whatever you want, but golfers, what's the one word in golf we never talk about? Shank. The shank is a very dirty word in golf. It's when you're trying to hit the ball that way and the ball goes that way. Now, if you wanted to do that, you could never, ever do it. It's when you don't want to do it that you try to hit the ball that way and the ball goes that way. Years ago, my brother Joe he somehow had managed to eliminate a few golfers at the Chautauqua golf course, and he now was in the finals. And the night before his match, and he wasn't quite sure who he'd be playing against, he went up to the range to hit some balls, and he ended up shanking the ball. The next day, he drives to the golf course. He's a little late for his match. He's getting his clubs out of his trunk. And the starter's telling him, Joe, come on, hurry up, you're up, you have your match. And my brother asked, and who am I playing against? And the starter yelled it back, Julie Shanks. Now that's horrible. I went home, and talking to my sister, she asked me if I had seen my brother, and I said, yes, how's he doing? I said, Mary, I said, I feel so sorry for him. She said, why? I said, he has the shanks. She said, sure, the way he gallivants every Friday night, who wouldn't be sick? Joe Caprino. We had a meeting at Moonbrook one afternoon. We hadn't played for quite a while. He'd had some surgery. His locker was one aisle over from mine, so I know he wears white jockey shorts. And so does Carl Kappa, he's over. But in any event, Joe said, Sam, are you going to give me any extra strokes today? And I said, no way. Why? Well, he said, come over here, I want to show you something. And he lifted up his shirt and he showed me a scar going down the full length of his back. I think Dr. Gutierrez might have had something to do with that. And sympathy got the best of me, and I said, I'll give you 2 more strokes aside. And he said that was fair. And we got on the tee, and he could just barely bend over to put the ball in the ground on the tee, and he then took the putt back and nailed it down the fairway about 250 yards around the corner, hits a wedge onto the green, sinks a putt for a 3, I'm 1 down. He pars number 2. I'm 2 down. This gentleman's game is starting to get to me. My blood is boiling. I'm full of anger. And by the time we got to number 7, kind words were not they were not freely given out. He hit a ball to the right of the rough on number 7, and his ball came to rest on a large stone deeply embedded in the turf. And we drove up, and I got that feeling of ecstasy and joy, and I was so happy, the adrenaline was flowing. And he said, what do I do here? I said, you're in the rough, we're playing summer rules, you have to hit the ball. He said, I'm not hitting the ball. I said, then you have to take a stroke. He said, I'm not taking a stroke. I said, Joe, your attitude is not conducive to this game. What is wrong? He said, my clubs are brand new. And I said, so? He said, I'm not hitting that ball, and I'm not going to take a stroke. I said, why? What were you going to hit? He said, a 4-iron. I was not about to give him a free drop. I said, use my club. He gladly took my club, swung at the ball. The flint and the sparks are flying. The dust is going off. There's a horrendous explosion. I see the club head, part of the club head of my 4-iron going off with the ball. It goes through the woods. It comes down the bank, up the bank, onto the green. I'm in shock. He turns around, and he hands me my club, and he looks me straight in the eye, and he says, Stupido. Now, for those of you, I'm sure you would understand what stupido means, but believe me, it is not a term of endearment. The last time anyone ever called me stupido was when Paul Cesana was doing my staff performance evaluation. He, too, looked me in the eye and called me stupido. Joe's always been a very resourceful person. He can make snap decisions. At will, he takes over, he's in charge, and he's in command. And there's a group down in, Jerry, I don't know whether you were at Greenleaf, I think you might have been there, Greenleaf or Innisbrook, and they had played 9 holes, and they only had 25 minutes for lunch before they had to be on number 10 tee. And they walked into this restaurant, and the waitresses are scurrying around, and Buzz McFadden is prodding them to hurry up, they have to get to the 10th tee. Suddenly, smoke is coming out of the kitchen. And things are in disarray a bit, and the chef opens up the door, and black smoke comes bellowing out. And he says, ladies and gentlemen, we have a small grease fire in the kitchen, but you can go ahead and place your orders. We'll take care of everything in the kitchen. The waitress said then to Joe's table, would you gentlemen like to order? And Joe says, for the group, I think we better have the smoked ham. As this committee of ours managed to get through with the help of Patsy and Pat and a few other people, we started to get on each other's nerves, and we said we need new blood. And so we drafted Greg Peterson. And Greg Peterson came on board, and you know what? he was as bad as the rest of us. He didn't straighten us out at all. He joined the crowd. But anyway, I'd now like to have you hear from some of the other people, the committee people. I'm now going to yield the podium to Merrill Rosen.
Sam, you gave me 2 minutes, huh? Thank you very much. Joe and I have, first of all, I'd like to thank the committee, thank Joe for having me be part of this event because it's kind of exciting. Joe and I go back quite a while. We've served on the Resource Center board, but in the beginning, I met Joe, started at the radio station in 1961, and after about 6 years, 7 years, Mr. Goldman decided that I had learned enough to start handling some of the larger accounts. And he says, I want you to go down and take care of Mr. Caprino. He's one of our best accounts. In fact, Cy went down and talked to Mr. Caprino and said, we want to have Merrill call on you. And Joe says, Merrill, I don't like that wise kid. I don't want him. So I said, no, well, give him a chance. Give him a chance. So he says, well, if it doesn't work out in 30 days, we'll have somebody else call on you. Well, thankfully, it worked out very, very well. Spent about 25 years working with Joe. And I can tell you something. Joe is quite a guy. He was never at a loss for a promotion. He had a zillion different promotions, just a zillion different ideas. Joe loved marketing his furniture store, and he showed it. People knew it. From his front porch on Franklin Street in what year, 1947? 48? 1950? Working on television sets, putting up antennas, right, to the biggest furniture store in Jamestown. I think yeah, you should be commended. In fact, I don't know if I'm supposed to tell this, but my wife, Patty, lived on Franklin Street, right across the street from Joe. This was before I was around. And he had his shop on the front porch, and they put plastic up to keep the weather out. And they were all saying, what's this guy doing? He's crazy. He'll never do it. He'll never make it. But no one wanted to tell him that he couldn't do it. So since no one told him he couldn't do it, he went ahead and did it. And I really respect you, Joe. You've done one heck of a job. Everyone used to tease Joe, when's your next sale? So he came up with the idea with, well, the last day of this sale is the first day of the next. He loved his promotions. We had a lot of them that we ran, but the one that I remember the most was, don't say hello.
And WJP liked my promotion too, because they made a lot of money.
We always broke evens. Don't say hello, say Caprinos were the best, cost less. I don't know if you people remember that, but that was a promotion that was ran exclusively on the radio station, and all it was, Joe got people to say, answer their telephones, Caprinos were the best, cost less. And if they did that, they'd win $50. They'd win the jackpot. And we'd make random calls throughout the day, and if they said it, we were calling, they'd win the $50. If they didn't win it, we'd add $2 to the jackpot. We must have done that for about 10 years. We stopped. It was really very, very successful. We stopped the promotion, but the people continued to answer the telephone. Caprinos were the best, cost less. Great promotion. He had another one. I don't know where he came up with this one, but he had one. For some reason, I guess he wanted parrots and parakeets to be able to say, go, go, go see Joe. Now, I'm a young guy. I'm down there talking to him, and I've got to tell him, no, Joe, I don't think this is going to work. I really don't think this is going to work. He says, I want these parrots to say, go, go, go see Joe. He had the people lined up in his store with parrots and parakeets in cages, and at one at a time, he would take them into the store, into his office, and the owner of the parrot would say, now come on, say, go, go, go see Joe, go, go, go see Joe. And the parrot would go, 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 go see Joe. He did it. It worked. I mean, this guy's phenomenal. He even had a flood one time so he could have a sale. Joe was a natural retailer. In Jewish, they call it chutzpah. I don't know where he learned it. He just had it.
Merrill Rosen.
Well, thank you. Joe's a true gentleman. Joe's a friend. I'm very proud to be part of this program, and it's been a joy.
Thank you. Thank you.
Now, because I do such a great job at the radio station, Cy Goldman can go and spend 7 months in Florida. So I called him and told him that we're having a party for Joe, and he says, "What's the temperature?" I said, "Cold." He says, "I'll send a tape." I said, "Okay." I've got about a 2-minute tape that Cy would like to let Joe hear, because I think he'll enjoy it.
Bring the mic down.
You know how to run this?
No.
Put play. No, I got to put the volume
You and I go back a long, long way.
Can you hear that?
From the days when WBEN-TV increased their power and you were selling TV sets from your porch. You seized the opportunity and started your success as a super promotion man and a good businessman. We have many, many memories, especially those famous golf trips. Remember Freeport when you, me, Dr. Ellis, and Tommy Shansfield ended up there? That was the time I was working on the assistant manager to give us a better room. And I asked him if he wanted to become a manager. He thought my line was terrific. I don't remember if it worked or not. Then those trips to Innisbrook, they were fabulous. At breakfast, I always wanted to know if the eggs came from a brown or white chicken and how they were laid. And then Myrtle Beach. Used to say water side, and I put every ball into the water, and water was everywhere. Those were the days. Then remember Hilton Head, you, John Gren, Bud Weinstein, and me. We had that beautiful villa on the golf course. They wanted to sell it to us for $40,000, and I said, this place will never go. See how astute I was? That place is now worth about $500,000. That's Cy Goldman. Boy, is he smart. Then when all of us decided that you should become a member of Moonbrook, and we campaigned to get a unanimous board to vote for you, it was one of the best things that happened at Moonbrook when you became a member. Joe Caprino, you are a great guy with a great heart. I'm proud to be your friend. Marilyn and I wish for you and your family the very best. We are sorry we can't be there tonight, but our thoughts and best wishes are with you. We love you, Joe. Congratulations.
I used to buy a lot of things from Joe years ago, going back 25, 30 years. And every time I bought something, he told me that he was selling it to me for less than what he paid for it. And I knew he lived an affluent life, and things were going quite well for Joe. And finally, I was going to buy a 19-inch TV set, and I said, he gave me a price, and I said, can't you do a little better than that? Sam, he said, honest to God, he said, that's less than what I paid for. I said, how do you have this lifestyle, and how do you do all the things you do? He says, value. I was thrown into a kind of a daze. I was walking out of the store. This thing was mulling over in I even forgot to pick up the turkey that he was going to give me for buying the TV set. And it was like 25, 30 years later, and just 3 months ago, when we were planning this event, and Arlene was in the kitchen with me, and I was thinking of Joe, and I said, I have to ask you a question. Is it possible, if you buy enough of something and you sell them fast enough, you can make a lot of money? Well, I told you earlier that Paul Cesana was the last one to call me stupid, though, but I got the third one. When someone with a slight accent wants to say hit, they say heat, heat, heat. And we're playing golf with Harry Klein one day, and Joe's in the cart with me, and Harry just got his ball over the pond in number 9. And Joe and I were getting in the cart, and Joe says, "Where's he going?" I said, "He's over there in the rough. He didn't do very well." He said, "Good." And when we got up to the top of the hill, we see Harry proceeding down the fairway. And Joe says, "What's he doing?" I said, "Joe, I don't know." So Joe yells to Harry. He said, "Harry, did you heat yet?" Harry says, "Yeah." Joe says, "Where'd you go?" He says, "I stopped at Lysandra's for a tuna." We asked Greg Peterson to come on. We needed someone that knew how to do the research. Greg has had a wealth of experience with the Resource Center as an advisor, as a consultant, attended many, many board meetings. And we thought Greg would be the one to really give us the heart and soul of this man, other than his business endeavors. Greg?
Thanks, Sam. I also think I'm here for affirmative action purposes as well. So, thanks.
You're welcome. Don't let it happen again.
You and me, Merrill. Okay. I got the historical perspective, and I think you guys are listening to the fun part with Sam, and I'm sure what you're going to hear in the next few minutes. Actually, you'll see on your note that I'm referred to as legal consultant. You've got to know a little bit about, as these grumpy old men were gathering together, the initial program was being put together. And as we were reviewing it, you look down there and you simply say, it says, Personal Reflections, Merrill Rosen, Vice President, GM, WJTN. Historical Perspective, Greg Peterson, Friend and Legal Consultant. Presentation of plaque, Jim Roselli, Friend and WJTN Personality. Presentation of gift, Carl Kappa, Friend and TRC Foundation Board Member. Now you can kind of see the guy who just preceded me where it was thought he placed in the program. He objected, and we've shortened the program so he doesn't feel out of place. Also, you'll also notice, because I am the legal consultant to the TRC Foundation, and I don't know why that was really put there, I am also duty-bound, since Randy did not do this, to identify those who may pay me in the future. Those members of the board of directors of the TRC Foundation. Carl Kappa. In fact, why don't you just stand for just so you recognize. Carl, of course, is here. Randy Ordinas. Marcia Bliss. Marcia. Carol Lawrence. And David Mancuso. So if you just briefly stand. These are the members of the TRC Foundation. Joe Caprino. He's really my hero. And I say that when the concept of a legacy of love dinner was first presented, there was nobody who was more deserving than Joe Caprino. Joe Caprino's always been a giver. I must pause and give you my first 2 recollections. Everybody on the dais here goes back a lot further than I, but it goes back to 1961. I lived in Allen Park. And as I was looking out my back door one day, it was in the summer, and there were these huge spotlights going across the sky, and I'd never seen anything like that in my life. So I asked my father, I said, "Dad, what is that? Is this an air raid or something that goes on here in Jamestown?" And so he put us all in the car. Off we went, a family event, Joe, and we went down to 2nd Street, and there we went to this Caprino's furniture storeroom. Went inside. My dad introduced me to Mr. Caprino. And what I really recall is the fact that you came up and paid little or no attention to my parents. I don't think they bought anything that day either. But went right to the kids, and with that gracious smile that only Joe Caprino had, and he pats you on the head, and he says, welcome, look around, and everything like that. And that was really my first recollection of Joe. But it continued on later that night. Because it was a nice warm night. The game, you could see the lights down at the stadium. We went down to the stadium that night. First, 1961, they had the Jamestown Falcons or the Tigers, I don't recall. And there, my mother, you got to know, she went in, we bought a program, we sat down, and in the program there was a coupon, and there was a coupon that said fill in a number of people who might be in attendance, and put it in, and you might win. My mother always taking a chance. She put it in, and sure enough, at the 8th inning, they announced for those who had this number in attendance, you were the winner. And we all had to look out. As you recall, I think it was in center or left center field, and there was a big billboard sign. It said Caprino's, furniture store, and that's where they had the attendance for that night. And my mother won. And my mother then went down and bought some furniture. That was my first introduction to Joe Caprino. Now, for those who, I have to bring this up for Merrill as well, my second recollection of Joe Caprino. And this was really heartwarming because the other two examples I just gave, Joe was a giver. Joe was involved in the community. Joe was involved, willing to support baseball, willing to make sure that there were a lot of charitable activities that Joe got involved in. But one of the things that for years was a mainstay of activity in our area was the Temple Hazard Abraham would have a sports dinner. And that Temple Hazard Abraham Club, of which Merrill was an integral part, they bring in the big names, the big sports names, the Johnny Unitas's, the Jimmy Browns, the Mickey Mantles, the Roger Maris's, when they were hot shots. I mean, and it was really a remarkable show. But what I remember the most is that after the event, and I was never invited to this, Joe, but I've seen it later. After the event, Joe would invite all of the guests from the Hotel Jamestown over to his house. What was that reason why Joe brought him over to the house? It was principally to bring the guests, the stars, over to meet his son, Anthony. I was always impressed with the fact that Joe Caprino brought the party to Anthony when Anthony could not be brought to the party. That always touched me. And if you ever go over to the Caprino's house, you will see a variety of pictures of Anthony and the family with a variety of these sports heroes, and that really touched me. You were always a giver. Talk about the go see Joe type things. I don't know how many times my children have used that phraseology because I mentioned it when we went over to your store one time, and even today they say, Dad, let's go, because we have to see Joe. It's become part of our family vernacular. But in 1980 is when I really want to talk a little bit about. Part of that time, I got involved with the Resource Center. The Resource Center is a remarkable corporation which serves the developmentally disabled and the mentally retarded. I was the attorney, and I was a board member. In 1980, we were looking for expanding the board to get some more businessmen, some people who had a passion for the growth of that corporation and a compassion for the developmentally disabled, and there was no one better suited for that than Joe Caprino. Joe was asked, and Joe accepted willingly. Joe was part, at the time, the Resource Center, I believe, probably had a budget of around $1 million. And during the next 10 years, through an awful lot of the leadership of Joe Caprino, he brought the Resource Center out into the community. He gave it credibility. He gave it that sense of being that, in fact, those who were handicapped mentally, physically, really were part of the community. And guys like Joe Caprino made that extra special effort. And how did he make that special effort? Not only did he attend board meetings, but when there were programs which were identified by the board that were either unfunded or underfunded, Joe Caprino would step up to the plate, find a mechanism by which we could fund it, or reach into his pocket and do it himself. I'll never forget that. Time and time again, it was Joe Caprino. We'd be arguing or discussing whether or not we could afford something. It would be Joe who would be the guy who would be stepping up and doing it was wonderful. He served on the Chautauqua Rehab Board, Personnel Committee, Building Committee, Finance, Residence. He did it all. He was a giver and continues to be a giver. I could go on, but I want to stop with something here. Maybe this is more of a historical perspective that maybe some of you know and maybe some of you don't know. Joe was born in the United States and at age 2 moved to Italy. And at age 18 returned back to the United States. Shortly after that, he comes into the area and he receives a draft notice from Italy. Benito Mussolini would like to have Joe come back and join him in the Italian army. At the same time, he got greetings from the United States government. Now here's a guy with a little bit of a conflict at this point. So he decided to join the U.S. Army in June of 1942. He rose to be a mess sergeant and was in the unit of the 66th Infantry. However, what was of real interest, and maybe some of you, if you know it, bear with me, it bears repeating. On Christmas Eve, 1944, Joe was on the ship known as the Leopoldville. To head towards Cherbourg to bring the troops to the Battle of the Bulge, as I recall. Right, Joe?
Right.
And en route, the boat was torpedoed by a German submarine. And in fact, the whole event subsequently became part of a book entitled One Night Before Christmas. I'm going to read a little bit now because this is, it's really telling about the character of Joe Caprino. It's what happened on that particular Christmas Eve in 1944. Joe, again, mess sergeant, he says, as you're preparing to embark on the cross-channel trip, these are quotes, I recall we even had our turkeys ready for Christmas dinner when the order came and we had to leave quite a bit of food behind. Joe was on the second level of Leopoldville, and he was resting in an upper hammock and had his rifle and helmet attached to the ceiling. It's okay if I go over 3 minutes?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. When the torpedo hit, the force of the impact dropped Joe's helmet and rifle onto his face. I've been hit, was his first recollection. He had facial lacerations. Joe then managed to put on a life jacket and made his way to the upper deck. You can just imagine he's up at the upper deck, and the Leopoldville was a ship, Belgians, right?
Right.
And the Belgians said, don't worry, because they were being hired to transport the Americans across the channel to go to the Battle of the Bulge. Belgians said, don't worry. Though we've been hit, the ship, there'll be smaller boats coming, we're going to get off, no problem. Well, what happened, those smaller boats came, and who left? The Belgians. They nicely just said, see you guys, we're leaving, we're bolting. So these hired Belgians left, and there were the Americans left on the ship, the Leopoldville, which was sinking, to fend for themselves. Nobody knew how to run the ship. So the next logical thing to do, and Joe recounts in this article, that as the ship was going down, everybody jumped into the channel. So there's Joe Caprino going into the English Channel, the cold waters of the English Channel.
Don't even want to swim.
That's right. And he went on to say, as the ship was going down, I was in the water, and I'd never swam in my life. But I learned fast that night, he said. He said he was fully clothed with a heavy overcoat and a canteen. As I was praying all the time and seemed to gain courage, all of a sudden a life raft came by with a duffel bag on it. My hands were too cold for me to be able to grab the raft enough to get on board. But I did manage to hang on to a rope. As I looked around, I could see the lights of Cherbourg in the distance, and also a short while later saw a spotlight from one of the ships which was picking up survivors. I kept hollering for help, and eventually the small boat came close to me. One of the sailors threw me a rope and attempted to haul me on board. He was unable to do so, and I slipped back into the water. He called to a shipmate who helped him bring me onto the deck. They couldn't even get his jacket off. It was so heavy and so tight that they finally had to take a knife and cut it off. One of the guys who was in the ships out picking folks out of the channel was a guy named Wesley Macintyre. At this point, I was going to stop, and Wesley Macintyre, who was a longtime pharmacist up in the Dunkirk, Fredonia area, right, was part of that, and part of this article. Wesley, I was going to introduce him at this very moment, and Wesley wanted to be here tonight because he heard about it. He called me specifically to say, I want to be there. Only last Monday did he broke his hip and unfortunately could not come, but he sends his greetings because he too wanted to share this special moment with you, Joe. Joe got off, was rescued, went over to Cherbourg, and one of the first things he did when he got ready was to look on a prisoner of war list to see if he could find his brother. This is a whole different story, and I'll stop soon.
All right.
His brother, Pete, who was in the Italian war, he was in the Italian army with Mussolini. So Joe, his first thought was when he gets over there is to try to look at a prisoner of war list to see if, in fact, he could find You. That's a giving guy. I got to tell you, that is really very impressive. This story, I'm sorry to take your time, but as I was read it and was able to recite it, it tells me a lot about the character of Joe Caprino. And as I reflect back, I really do thank God for the rescuers that night in December of 1944, who saved you, Joe, so that you could leave a legacy not only to your family and friends, but for everybody for years to come. And that being the legacy, that legacy of love that we're here tonight. And Joe, I just want to thank you for everything you've done for a whole lot of people, including me, and this is a special night. Thank you, Joe.
Thank you.
Joe, when he talks about his military service, he commonly refers to the fact that he was on the winning side. He went down with the ship, and his brother Pete gets a pension from the Italian government. Our next member of the Joe Caprino's fan club is the guy who only needs a cup of happiness to keep him going all day long, Jim Roselle.
I get nervous when I see a microphone. Joe, or Giuseppe as I often call him, this night reminds me of what Yogi Berra said when they had a night like this as a tribute to him. And I know you feel the same way. Yogi said, "Thanks for making this night necessary." Sam Restivo, the MC at those meetings he was talking about, said, "We're going to allow you 3 minutes." Can you imagine Roselle with only 3 minutes? That was shorter than a Caprino commercial. Giving me 3 minutes is like giving President Clinton 10 minutes for a State of the Union address. Joe, I'm not going to take too long, but I would like the guys to loosen their ties and take off their shoes. And the ladies, you do the best you can. As I was coming to this tonight, I said, I think the audience will feel like I feel. Aren't we fortunate to be called friends of Joe Caprino? And aren't we lucky to have him in our community? This tribute to Joe gives me an opportunity to express my sincere thanks, my deep gratitude for Joe believing in me and my radio show and WJTN. I had to get that in because Merrill Rosen's here.
I sold it to him.
Okay. I don't know if you're aware of this, but I probably did for Joe Caprino over 1,000 on-location shows.
And we didn't make a dime.
I didn't count them, but I would have to think in 30-some years that Joe bought my show, I was at his store, wherever he was located, at least 1,000 times or better. I don't think there's any announcer in this entire world that can claim that distinction, that one sponsor would buy one program over 1,000 times. Merrill Rosen claims he only bought 500. I made a mistake on each and he had to give him 500 free. It was a joy to do them for Joe, but let me tell you, It wasn't easy. Joe is a very intense listener. And I would start my show at 8:35 from the store. And I knew that Joe turned his volume up on the radio. And he would wait for my opening remarks. And I would purposely plan and rehearse this flourishing opening, this great beginning to Joe's new sale. And I'd go through the entire routine, and I thought, Jim, you did a great job. The phone would ring 5 seconds later. The manager of the store would say, you're wanted on the telephone. I'd go to the phone and I'd say, hello, Jim, this is Joe. You did a great job, but you forgot the address. 1,000 calls like that. I have to tell you, this man is a genius for promotion. Oh, really, the ultimate. You don't know, many of you, but when he started in business, after he left Franklin Street and went to 2nd Street, he was located in the middle of 2 other stores that competed with him. He was the middle store. He goes to work one morning. The store on the left has got a big sign on their window, rock bottom prices. The store on the right has got a big sign in the window, lowest prices in town. And Joe scratches his head and he says, oh my God, what am I going to do? He comes out with his own sign, right in the middle, main entrance. You believe that story, don't you? I could have brought with me, I don't know how many commercials that I've done for Joe Caprino, but I brought 2 that I thought you'd enjoy hearing one more time. Joe never rested as far as ideas that would suddenly occur to him that he could have a sale. He would listen for anything that would be the impetus to a sale. He heard me give a public service announcement one morning. He heard me say, St. James Church is going to have a St. Joseph's table on Sunday. You've heard about the St. Joseph's table that you go to every year. Joe suddenly decides to have a sale. Let me give you the commercial. Ladies and gentlemen, your prayers have been answered. Just in time for holiday feasting, Caprino's Complete Home Furnishings presents their St. Joseph's Day sale on dining room tables. Enjoy the heavenly savings. Imagine the angelic smiles as your family gathers around your new table from Caprino's. If you've been praying for more room for guests at your holiday table, don't miss the St. Joseph's Day table at Caprino's Complete Home Furnishings on East 2nd Street, where the best really does cost less, and God bless you. Now,
don't believe everything he says.
Now, he hears about St. Patrick's Day. This commercial. You'll be green with envy if you miss the St. Patrick's Day sale at Caprino's Complete Home Furnishings. Save big on anything green. Sofas, chairs, love seats, matching ottomans upholstered in green fabric are discounted. Lamps with green shades, and more. Naturally, Joe O. Caprino saves you plenty of green stuff. Portraits of Washington, Lincoln, Jackson, Grant, If it's green, you save on it during the St. Patrick's Day sale at Caprino's Complete Home Furnishings, where the leprechauns make sure the best costs less. That's the fun part of the evening. There is a serious side to this. The man you're recognizing tonight, you're recognizing him for the Resource Center. But the honor goes beyond that. We should, you know, let me do this. Mary, stand up. This is the other half of the team. Please give her a round of applause. He knew a beautiful girl on Franklin Street when he met her. I only lived 3 doors from Joe when he had his radio shop. But you're honoring more than a man who gave to the Resource Center. You're honoring a successful businessman. You're honoring a man who tried to defend his country. But you're honoring a devoted husband. You're honoring a loving father. You're honoring a doting grandfather. I've had many dinners with Joe. And every time we're out for dinner, this man looks at the menu and he thinks quickly of his wife, what she might enjoy to take home, and he also thinks of his grandson, Paulie. And he thinks Paulie might like something on that menu. And so he goes to the phone and he asks if they would like some of the specials that are there or what the dinners are, and he would recite them to him, and he would come back and tell the waitress, give me 2 takeouts. That's a common occurrence, friends. Let me introduce for just a brief moment here, before I conclude my remarks, one of his dearest friends. That is until they get to the first tee. On the tee, they quickly become enemies. But of course, a man who's had a joy playing with him for years and has loved Joe's sense of humor and provides some of his own. He has a special gift to give to Joe Caprino tonight. My pleasure to introduce a great coach, a great teacher, a great citizen of our community, Mr. Vince Joy.
I don't know if I need a microphone, and years ago when I first started teaching, I had study halls with more than I had here. When I was at the high school, we had 144 kids in one study hall with one teacher, Mr. Joy. But let me tell you this, in those days, you could carry a stick and use it without fear of being sued. Anyway, Sam and Jim, everybody gets up here, brings back something. I've known this guy probably before I was born. He's a little older than I am. You know, can you hear me without this mic? Well, that settles that. The one thing we play, as you might know, Joe, Carl Kappa, and Al Galati. And on this little menu here, Al Galati is a guest. You know, I always thought he was a cousin. Now, I'm playing in this foursome, and you got 3 guys from Tuttarizia that are cousins and brothers, and I'm only from Marianopoli, and hell, I'm the odd man out. Greg, you feel like affirmative action? But we have fun. Let me get to the main thing here. Greg mentioned about Joe's being sunk in the English Channel. Well, I think every time we play golf and we get to number 4 and number 11, Joe has flashbacks that he's on that ship and he's crossing the English Channel. So he tees the ball up, and sure enough, in the water. I don't care if it's 4 or 11. Now, he's not optimistic enough well, he is optimistic enough to feel that, hell, he only has to carry one ball. It's going over the water, but he never does. So he hits in the water, and that ball goes down like Leopoldville? And he turns around with that nice, sheepish grin. He says, Vince, get in your bag and give me a ball, will you? So this goes on for week after week, month after month. Thank God I find a few, and thank God I got some that I can give him. Finally, one day I says, hey, Joe, you know, there's a limit. How many golf balls in my golf bag? He says, Vince, what are you worrying about? If you can't afford the game, give it up. So, Joe, I want you to stand up.
Are those the new ones?
Stand up. I want you to open this.
Get this dirty balls, huh? They want you found in the water.
It says Titleist.
They're washed.
They're not even washed. They're going.
That's the one I lost in the water.
What we have here are 12 balls from the practice green that have not been washed. We figure they'll get washed this year when he hits them into the water. So, Joe, that's my gift to you. And on a personal note,
You thought Denny O'Neill, you stole a dozen golf balls?
See, he always has the last word. But I've learned this. I respect my elders, and I couldn't find a better gentleman to have a friend. Thank you.
Thank you, Vince.
Thank you very much, Vince. If I may just tell one more story, and let me say I have to thank my wife, Kathy, who gave me enough time in my life to enjoy Joe's company many times. Very personal story, but another part of this man's personality and his love for people. My brother Phil was in the nursing home for 14 years, who loved to play golf with Joe. And we brought my brother Phil home to enjoy a day with us every holiday we could. Christmas, Thanksgiving, Labor Day, Memorial Day, whatever day was a holiday, we wanted to bring Phil home and let him stay in the house with the family, and then take him back to the nursing home in the evening. Joe Caprino made sure we could enjoy the use of a Caprino truck that had an hydraulic lift, provided the driver to go to the nursing home, pick up my brother, bring him to our home at 11 o'clock, let him enjoy 8 hours with us. The driver would come back at 7 in the evening to take my brother Phil back to the nursing home. Unbelievable. Let me also thank Joe along with Carl Kappa, because Carl, along with Joe and Vince and Al, have staged, believe it or not, a little mini tournament that he wanted just the friends of my brother Ross and my brother Phil to enjoy in memory of them. We had 2 foursomes on our first tournament this year. Not a tournament in the sense of competition, but just a day to enjoy each other's company. As while we play the game, we tell great stories about my brothers. I think sometimes, for me, it would be a nightmare to think Joe Caprino wouldn't be part of my life. Joe, thank you very much. God bless you. I have the, as they say, the distinct honor, Joe, of presenting you with a beautiful plaque made at the Crawford Furniture Company. It'll cost you money. Carl gave me the price. I forgot what it is. It says TRC, Legacy of Love, 1996. Joe Caprino, the honoree. Joe, my pleasure to give this to you.
Thank you.
Before we ask Carl to come up, we'd like to interrupt just for a moment and ask Janine Zimmer to come up and kind of give a little talk to Grandma and Grandpa.
First of all, we wanted to present you with these flowers for your 50th wedding anniversary.
Well, thank you, granddaughter.
Good evening, and thank you for giving me this honor tonight to be able to speak on my grandfather's behalf. Granted, a man with such a beautiful array of qualities needn't have much said about him to reveal his wonderful character. His unyielding generosity and determined heart has spoken clearly for his amazing lifestyle through his modest silence this evening. No matter what the cause or who the person, he always finds an excuse to help. Tonight was a gracious gesture. Thank you all for coming, and thank you, Grandpa, just for being you.
Thank you, dear.
Well done, Janine. Now, I'd like to call on our good friend, Carl Kappa, who will conclude, for the most part, today's program.
Thank you, Sam. One of the things I found out being on this committee is that I've been on a lot of committees, but I learned from Sam a surefire way of getting your way. When you're the chairman, and he was the chairman of our committee, and you don't like what the guy is saying, you say you're out of order. So I learned that I was out of order plenty of times during our meetings here. But I'll tell you, I've never served on a committee where we had more fun. We really had a ball, and we look forward to it. In fact, we're going to have another meeting to discuss this meeting next week.
Be prepared to remember.
Yeah. We'll remind you. I'll have to, yeah, in case I remember, but I remember one of our people on our committee called me one day. He says, Carl, we were going to have the meeting down in my office. He says, I won't be able to come to the meeting. I was stuck at the station or something like that. And I said, well, we're going to have it at my office. He says, oh, were you? And I said, yeah, you were invited down here, and we're having refreshments. And he said, well, he says, I completely forgot about the meeting. I forgot it was at your office. And so we gave him the business the next meeting, I'll tell you. But you notice they left me for last, and you can understand it when you had all these gifted speakers ahead of me. And I'm not going to really say anything nice about Joe because I can't think of any. But the one thing he was, and it was true, he was a mess sergeant. And when he went into the service, the first meal he was asked to prepare, being of Italian background, was spaghetti and meatballs. Well, I understand that one of the meatballs fell off the table, and you know, we had combat boots. It dented one of the combat boots. And he immediately called my mother. He says, how do you make those damn things? So, and that's a true story. But anyway, I've been blessed by giving the honor of really giving Joe what I think is going to be a surprise to him.
More strokes.
Don't do it.
Don't do it, Carl. You know, after all these years, I didn't want to announce it in front of such a huge crowd, but I spotted Joe last year. And guess what? He took it. And the third thing is he beat me. So it's really my honor to inform Joe of this news that I know he's going to cherish. An endowment fund of $20,000 has been established at the TRC Foundation in his honor. And the endowment will read as follows. The Joseph Caprino Endowment Fund will be used to address the needs and aspirations of individuals with disabilities in Chautauqua County. Income from this fund will be utilized in perpetuity for services needed by men, women, and children with disabilities and their families. I know this has been one of Joe's dreams, and it's here now. And with that, I want to present to you the Resource Center 1996 Legacy of Love honoree, Joseph Caprino. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. You know, I've been nervous since they told me I was going to be up here tonight, but I'm still nervous. See, Carl Kappa, he donated $20,000, think nothing of it. For $2 in the golf course, look out. He wants it. I want to tell you a little story about Sam Restivo here. Before he quit the Panama school, he was a professor. So one day we're playing golf, and one of the holes, that's the number, 12 tee. He's underneath the trees, and it's tee shot. He goes over there to try to get the ball, try to hit the ball. And Sam seems not to hit the ball. Wants to take a stroke penalty for outside. So I said, "Are you kidding?" He says, "He's swinging. Come on, he branches over. You can't swing it. You watch it." Took up home. His club got tangled up on the branches. He didn't swing at all. I said, "Sam, you know, for a professor, you're stupid." I thought.
That's foresight.
Oh, I'm having a lot of fun playing golf with Carl Kappa, Algalatis, Miss Joy. Algalati, you know, he's almost a priest. He don't swear. But in the golf course, if time he misses a shot, he's a jeeper. Jeeper. I thought we hear a lot of jeepers in our golf course. Ben Joy is the quietest one. He don't say nothing. When he misses a putt, you see a putter fall up in the air. One time I stuck it up the tree. Anyway, I want to thank everybody so much. And before my wife, I want to tell the 12th was next week. It's the 50th anniversary. She put up with me for 50 years. But thank you, everybody, very much, everyone. I don't know what we'll do without the Resource Center. This is my son, Anthony. He's been at the Resource Center for 13 years. And he's 48 years old now. Anthony is saying thank you to everybody, Anthony. Come out loud. Thank you very much. Thank you. Congratulations, Joe. Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Happy anniversary.
What do you want us?
Be good, Sam.
Where are you going to do it? Right over there. He wants us over there. What's in here?
Joe, congratulations. Okay.
Batteries.
Fantastic, you guys. You guys are fantastic. You know.
Very good.
I was going to express myself to tell you, I thought you guys were, you know.
Did a great job.
I was honored to be here tonight. Very nice.
Thank you. Thank you.
Diana, Randy, thank you.
Thank you.
That was great.
How are you?
You're a natural.
You want me to give you a kiss? Oh, that was super. Just absolutely great. Mary, thank you. It was great.
Bill,
50 years later,
thank you for coming.
Sam, great job.